First solo episode in a while, but sometimes it is hard to find a guest for the show. And largely that is due to traveling around so frequently. So I thought it was a good time to do a solo episode, keep it tight, keep it short, talk about what is to come, as well as my experience in Germany. So we can really start with my experience in Germany. I spent the last 6 months out in Regensburg, Germany. And I learned a lot about myself. The biggest thing that occurred for me and the most glaring thing was finding God, really. And I did what's called a mind map before I left at the start of the year. And a mind map, essentially, you take colored pencils, you take really a large sheet of paper. It could be anything. It could be a collage. You can take scraps of a magazine, anything. But you're starting to create a mind map as far as it's very free flowing where your mind is at the time. And it can be a good creative aid to a creative block, maybe. I used it as seeing and feeling what was to come on this journey. And the two words that I came out with after all of this mind mapping, I spent time coloring in all these different boxes and whatnot, was simplicity and growth. And I felt that this trip, this journey, was going to be it was going to be an introverted journey. I was going to learn a lot about myself, and I didn't know how. It was just an internal feeling that I had going into it. And, a couple months ago, as I'm reading Carl Jung's book, The Undiscovered Self, it hits me that this spirituality that I've held on to for quite some time is a belief in God. And as soon as I opened that door and I went to a church service, an English-speaking church service in Munich, and started reading scripture, things have really just begun to open up for me. My eyes have been opened, and it's beautiful. I mean, it's life-giving. For me, it's been one of the greatest experiences of my life because it continues to flow every single day. And that's what I take away from Germany as a whole. When people ask, "Oh, how was Germany?" It was absolutely fantastic. I found God. I don't really know how it could have been much better from that instance. The baseball was okay. When it was competitive, it was fun. When it was not competitive, it was not fun. And the playoffs, obviously we lost in the championship. But those were competitive games, and they were super fun. And what it actually did was create almost a bigger itch for me in terms of playing a higher level of competition again. I thought when I got released in July of 2024, that was done. And then through a series of synchronicities, I ended up in Australia playing for the Melbourne Aces, and then right after in Germany. And that kind of takes us, to what is to come. On Friday, October 10th, I'm going to head out to Korea for 1 month. I'll be playing for baseball for 3 weeks there, and then a fun trip at the end for 1 week. But the way this came about was the team that I played with in Australia, the Melbourne Aces, were part of the ABL, the Australian Baseball League. It's been a league that's been going on for quite a number of years. And there's 6 teams in the league. Maybe the beginning of the summer, I got a text message that the Aces were leaving the league. Well, shit, okay, that sounded like something I wanted to do again. Now I don't know what's going to come. And what came was that they messaged us maybe a couple weeks later that they were going to take the Aces out to Korea to play in a KBO event. So if you're unfamiliar with baseball, you have the MLB, then you have the NPB, the Nippon Professional League. Nippon Professional Baseball, NPB, yeah, but it's a league. In Japan, that's the second highest league in the world. And then the third would most likely be the KBO, the Korean Baseball Organization. And last year at the end of my stay in Australia, we played a KBO team, the KT Wiz. Now, Korea does their spring training in Australia because the weather is better, similar to how teams in America go to Arizona or Florida. Well, we played the KT Wiz in 2 games, one like a practice game and one, exhibition with fans, and like it was a real game, and we beat them. And so I think that was eye-opening for the KBO a bit, seeing the level of play of the Aces, because I mean Australian baseball is pretty quality baseball. And what came of that is the opportunity for our team to go play in Korea in a KBO Fall League. So the way I understand it is that there's going to be, I believe it's the minor league teams of some KBO teams, LG, Kia, Samsung, teams like that. And there's also a couple other teams. There's a Japanese independent all-star team. There's like a Korean university team. It's kind of a mix, but it's 13 games in 15 days. There's a semifinals and a championship. And it's in Busan, Korea, so the second biggest city in Korea outside of Seoul. Now, the cool part is after playing for 3 weeks, I'm going to get to spend a week in Seoul, Korea, hanging out with Min. And for the listeners of the show who were with us with me back in the beginning part of the summer, they met Min, my friend that I had met in Korea. Min is from South Korea. I met him in Croatia. He was traveling around the world. So I invited him to stay at my place in Germany. He came and stayed. He bat-boyed for a game. Just hilarious. And he told me, if you're ever in South Korea, you got a place to stay. Well, funny enough, there's no coincidences. I'm coming to South Korea. And so he was like, yeah, absolutely, you can stay with me. So I'm going to spend a week out there in Seoul, just hanging with Min. And, after that, I got a wedding in Mexico. And then at the end of November, I'll go to Australia, and we'll play Korean teams in Australia until about the end of February, so a couple months. All this being said, one of the things I'm most excited about is the opportunity to meet and come across just a wide array of people. Who knows who I'm going to be able to come into contact with and to create relationships with and to have conversations with. And that's really what this show is about. So it's super exciting to go to places that are unfamiliar and, have that opportunity, which is funny as I think about it, in the sense that I just say going to the unfamiliar place in Germany felt isolating. And I say that also because Germany is a slightly isolated, their culture is slightly isolating. It's a very rule-following society. People take things generally pretty serious. It's a very interesting vibe over in Germany. It was never a place where I was there that I thought, I could live here. I never got to the point of being like, I could live here. I've been to Portugal or Barcelona, or places where I've been there, I've been like, I could live here. I could definitely live here. Germany was never that way, and so as the time came to a close in Germany, it felt like, you have an hourglass, and when you first turn an hourglass over, the sand is like coming through rather heavily. And in the middle part, it finds its flow, and towards the end, it starts to just drip one grain of sand at a time down into the base of this hourglass. And that's how it felt for me. It felt like this was the perfect amount of time to spend there and to learn about myself and to, find God and really explore. And now it's on to, another journey. And right now that journey is back in Seattle, where the weather has been just fantastic. We're starting to get a little rain here right now, but I mean, it's really been amazing. And one thing that I've noticed about myself being back, and one thing that I've gained from coming into conversation with God, is the ability to do nothing. And I don't think of doing nothing as I'm going to sit in this chair all day and just stare at this wall, or I'm just going to scroll my phone. Doing nothing to me is being prompted by a spirit that's within you and following that spirit. And as I follow that spirit, that's doing nothing. It's a mindless way of being because you're driven by a spirit, something much larger than the self. And I recently watched a movie. I had a movie recommended to me to watch called Christopher Robin. It's a Winnie the Pooh movie. And there's just, at first I was like, Winnie the Pooh? And there's just a whole load of good quotes in that movie. One of them that really stuck out to me was, Winnie the Pooh says at one point, doing nothing leads to the best kind of something. I really thought about that. So what's the inverse? It's doing something leads to nothing, which when you think about, I'm going to do something to get this feeling, because we're all chasing feelings. I'm going to do something to get this feeling. You really are left with nothing because the feeling is in doing nothing. And that's really been something I've noticed since I've been back, is just the ability to be moved by my own spirit and be okay with doing nothing. It's as if when you're practicing baseball, it's sometimes we get in our own way as far as, oh, I have to feel myself getting better. Well, no, you just do it with authentic intention, and you'll the getting better will naturally occur, rather than I'm hitting in a cage and I'm thinking, oh, I'm getting better right now. Well, now the conscious brain has come in. Now I'm doing something essentially to feel nothing. I don't know that I'm going to feel nothing, but that is what often happens. Rather than you're just doing nothing, you're just prompted by the spirit to practice baseball, and you're enjoying the experience of practicing baseball. And that could lead to the best kind of something. And that is the best because it's endless, it's expansionless. There's no limits to anything within that practice. And it's quite beautiful. So with all that travel coming up, it just excites me, the opportunity to do nothing, and oftentimes that'll lead to the best kind of something. Another great one-liner in that movie, as I continue to think about it, was, I always get to where I'm going by walking away from where I've been. And I came back to Seattle. Now, my mom's going to sell her house. Update. She's moving to Arizona, which is awesome. But with that, you got to throw some stuff out. Well, I got back and I'm looking at all this baseball gear I got from college, pro ball, just accumulated over the years. And I'm kind of picking and choosing at the start. What am I going to keep? What am I not going to not keep? And finally it hits me. It's like, oh, I need to let it all go. I need to throw everything out. And I did. I just gave it all away. All my baseball stuff, from Oregon to Alabama, some USA baseball gear, professional baseball gear from different teams, everything. You can have it. All the clothes and everything. It's got to go, because in order to get to where I'm going, I got to walk away from where I've been. I got to let those things go to take in the new. It's a giving and receiving relationship in any aspect, whether it's between me and God or me and my clothes. And I've uncovered, if you don't know who Joseph Campbell is, I highly recommend looking into Joseph Campbell. He is someone who spent his life uncovering myths and learning about myths, ancient myths in the world. And when I really start to think about, the myths within today's world, that we're left with very little. Certain myths like why facing east has a different meaning or symbolism than facing west, right? Facing east, the sun rises. That could be seen as rebirth, as coming anew. And then facing west, well, that's where the sun sets. So it's the ending of a cycle. Same with a full moon and no moon and new moons and moon phases. You know, all of these rituals and myths that were so prevalent in earlier civilizations that gave life so much an abundance of meaning, we've really, it feels like I've thrown by the wayside in today's Western society. And I know you know, I don't have a lot of myths or rituals that I follow, but it is something that I'm more inquisitive about. Like just today I was looking up coffee, rituals around coffee. And oftentimes people would have 3 cups of coffee. No, okay. I think their cups were a lot smaller. Only in America are we drinking big old coffees, you know? So I think they're drinking little espressos, whatever. The first cup was awakening. The second cup was understanding. And the third cup was enlightenment. You think about those phases, awakening in the first cup, understanding that awakening in the second cup, and the third cup is an enlightenment from that understanding. And just those rituals, I mean, coffee has always been thought of as something throughout time that it is a conversation starter, similar to wine, right? You sit and have coffee with your friends and it invites conversation and relaxation. Well, you think about coffee now and Western society, and you know, it's coffee to go, it's coffee on the run, coffee in the car, coffee while you're working. No, that's not the origins. That's not like the source of coffee. Another source of coffee was that people of a certain religion, I don't know which one, would use it to stay up at night, I believe while they were doing an all-night type of prayer situation, but it held, you know, a symbolism in terms of it. Well, it does have caffeine, but it helped them stay alert, spiritually alert, while they're staying up all night. And it's like, man, what do I drink coffee for? And I think uncovering some of those myths and rituals within my own life has been super fun. You know, you think about, I originally started going into the Puget Sound, the ocean, for cold plunges, right? Well, there's so much more about the ocean and its symbolism and the nourishment from the salt water and the pull of a current and the ecosystem and the life that's under it, that there's so much mystical meaning within it that gives it this abundance of meaning within our own life, right? Like natives saw all these animals that they ate and killed, and they prayed over these animals after they were killed so that it would nourish their bodies. There was a respect element. And that's something that I've been working to be more consistent at, is praying before I eat, giving thanks for the animal that died for me to eat this food. And when you do that, well, I mean, I already eat pretty clean as it is, but you start to think about that animal, you know, before you eat it, or that bread and how it was made, those vegetables and where they came from, and the nourishment that it's going to provide my body. And just those type of rituals, it's so crazy how sometimes I just eat and then I'm like, oh man, I didn't even give thanks for this food. I just started scarfing it down. And it's just second nature, you know? So uncovering some of these myths within my own life has been super fun and something I plan to continue doing. But Joseph Campbell, who originally had a series on PBS back in maybe the 90s, but he's got some stuff on Spotify. You can look up Joseph Campbell on Spotify, and I believe it's called Uncovering Life's Myths. I mean, he wrote the book A Hero with a Thousand Faces. He talks about the hero's journey a lot, and he's just a super uplifting individual, which this is the type of spirits and energies that I want to fill my life with. And that's why I'm excited to travel to these new places. I mean, Korea, Australia, having teammates from around the world on this show, and just learning about where people came from and their upbringing, everything is super exciting to me. I believe next week's guest is going to be one of my buddies who is a Special Forces Army Ranger, and that's gonna be really exciting. I haven't seen him in a long time. So to keep this one tight, short, I just want to finish it with a little biblical reading and some of the thoughts that I have from it, because I think something I always thought of when I thought of God was a man up above with a white beard and a cane and a robe, and he's up there judging our every action to see if we get into heaven or earth. Well, no. That once I release that, it becomes much more abundant, that God is just an omnipresence that's around me consistently and in everything. It's on this paper that I'm reading from right now. In Matthew 10:39, whoever finds his life will lose it, and whoever loses his life for my sake will find it. So as I read from that, it's losing my life for the sake of Jesus, for no reward. There's nothing is guaranteed. It's doing nothing. There's no reward other than faith in what is true and what is good. And yet Jesus tells me that I will find it. It is inevitable. Whoever loses his life for my sake will find it. It is inevitable. In Matthew, going back to 10:26, so have no fear of them, for nothing is covered that will be revealed, that will not be revealed, or hidden that will not be known. So all will be brought to light in God's time. And Jesus is telling me to have no fear, be fearless. 10:27, what I tell you in the dark, say in the light, and what you hear whispered, proclaim on the housetops. And I think for a second we can meditate on this one. What I tell you in the dark, say in the light. In the dark is when we spend time in prayer. Maybe that's with my eyes closed, with the lights off, activating that third eye center, that kind of that dream center, and where you can really come into contact with the unconscious, with the voice of God, because it's not my voice speaking to me. I'm not my own. I am not my own. If I'm not my own, if I believe I'm not my own, I'm either, God's or I'm Satan's, essentially. And if I, choose to be God's, it's a choice. If I choose to be God's, that sounds pretty fun. And if I don't believe in either of those, well, then I am my own, and that sounds pretty lonely. And what you hear whispered, when I hear whispered, it's like in my head, and you ask God, you come into conversation with God. It's giving thanks, but it's also asking God for what you need, what you're feeling, coming into conversation, being truly open with God while I'm praying. What you hear whispered, proclaim on the housetops. It must come through action. When the Spirit speaks to me, trust it and go be it in the world. Follow the Spirit. When my eyes are closed and God speaks to me in the dark, allow my eyes to open and embody those words in the light. This for me is being elevated. This is elevating. This is faith. This is trust. So be open with God, be true with God, and witness the way that it is illuminated, then walk it. And I am not my own, therefore lose myself for the sake of Jesus. And if I am not my own, then of course this is myself, this is the flesh, the body, the skin, that God has trusted me with to be a vessel for him. Therefore, go by the way of God. Let the Spirit guide me with zero need for a result. For a city on a hill cannot be hidden. And this prompts me to talk about the last thing that I've been meditating on recently is that you have the Father, the Son, the Holy Spirit, right? There's a three-way relationship there. The Father, the Son, the Holy Spirit. So what I've started to think about is, okay, if I'm not my own, okay, well, if I'm God's, okay, so you have God, you have myself, which is the flesh, the skin, the 3D, and you have me, which is the true self, the spirit. And so I drew it in the way of a tree, right? You have the roots that are beneath the tree, the soil, and you have the sun. Both those things feed the tree. That is God. Okay, now you have the exterior of the tree. What you see when you walk by. When I walk by that tree, that is myself. That's the flesh. And on the interior, the true self, you have me. And so as we talk about that three-way relationship, you have me, myself, and God. And so in transcending the above and below ground, in transcending the space between the tree that is above ground and the roots that go underneath, as well as the space between the sunlight and those leaves, you transcend the above and below ground. And so that's the relationship between God, me, and myself. How? Well, trust and faith in God enhances the relationship between me, true self, and God. This relationship is a conversation. Now, accountability between me and myself comes in being my word. Me and myself. Me, the true self. Myself being the flesh, the exterior, the 3D. So, trusting God creates a better relationship between me and God. Now, being more accountable with my actions based on that trust and faith is a better relationship between me and myself because I know I can trust myself. This is the interior becoming the exterior in my way of being. God talks about you are a light. This is letting the light shine. And so we look at it in that relational being. It's God speaks to me, the true self, whispers in the dark. The true self, me, listens. And myself is the last stage of that, which acts upon that spirit-guided direction. This is a good tree bearing good fruit. This is a way of being. It's creating a clean line, a clean flow of relation from God to me, to myself. This is giving and receiving. The Bible talks a lot about action. Action. I will speak to you, but it is action that transcends. It's a bottom-up system. We look at when failure occurs, it's from the top down. It's false action, and then you get a lack of trust. So false action from myself, doing things that just the true self, me, know are not good. Well, then there's a lack of trust between me and myself. Well, then God speaks, and there's no one to listen because me is not listening. And this is why we are all relational beings. It's a relationship between me, myself, and God. And so I asked myself, how can I enhance the strength of that relationship between God and me. And it's spending more time in conversation with God. I mean, I think it's incredible when you start to have conversation with God and just open up space and listen. How can I enhance the strength of the relationship between me and myself? And it's taking action on the guidance from God. It's as simple as that. It really is as simple as that, and it becomes, we make it much more complicated. So I wrote, talk with God, be more open with God, for I am not my own. That is why it is a 3-part relationship. The more open I am with God, the more open He is with me, and this relationship is love. And in unconditional love, there are 0 conditions to it. That moves freely between me, myself, and God. It is boundless, limitless, and creating a cosmic ripple. And so that was pretty dense there, just where we went in this episode. But it's what's been relevant for me. It's kind of how I am being it is how I'm being in the world right now, not kind of. It is absolutely how I'm being in the world right now. And so I'm just proclaiming on the housetops right now. I'm saying it in the light. And I didn't even think about that until right now. This is what I'm being told in the dark, and I'm saying it in the light. This is what I'm hearing whispered, and therefore I must proclaim it on housetops. And housetops meaning maybe in your ears, whether you're listening on a speaker or some headphones in a car. Go back and forth between working out to music, working out to a podcast. Wherever that is right now, I'm trying to just move authentically. I am moving authentically. I have to take trying out of that. I am. And maybe one more little bit, because, we're free-flowing right now. We're free-flowing. And so I wrote about, as above, so below. I've heard Leo, one of the guests on the podcast, said that, and I didn't quite grasp it until I grappled with it last night. In relationship with what is both above and below, I transcend the physical barriers perceived in the 3D world. This is when the true self, me, becomes one with what is above and below. Because that space has been transcended, there's only one. Because that space has been transcended above and below, there's only one. In this state, myself, the flesh, becomes the 3D being, the 3D product, what you see of the 4D quantum experience. Now, a field is emitted from myself, from this body, this flesh suit. There's a field emitted. Carl Jung talks about the field. It's just a fact. We all have these fields around us. It's why you can go into a room and you get a feeling about it. That's the feeling. A field is emitted from myself that can become a magnet in the quantum. What was once above and below is now here, and distance in the quantum becomes non-existent. And rather than reaching, it becomes attracting. The field has a pull to it. Thus, there becomes no need and no desire to pull, to try to go do all these different things. That's something, I'll take a quick pause, that's something that has really, God spoke to me about, was social media and things like that. I was really grasping at what I was trying to be, making these videos, and I really didn't like it. It was causing me a lot of angst. And so I sat, one night just having a conversation with God, and He basically told me just delete it. And I said, why? I asked why. And He said, because those are false, that's a false image of you. And so I just deleted it. So we're not on Instagram anymore. And what I felt immediately was clarity, because I was reaching in all these different directions to try to be something. And what did I get out of it? What did I get from trying to do something? Is nothing. I was left with nothing. And in deleting that and doing nothing, I've felt the greatest sense of something. All types of something. I've come in a relationship with people back home, and it's been very fruitful and exciting. And so, rather than reaching, it becomes attracting, and the field has a pull to it. In releasing those false selves, that false self, and in just simplifying, being like, man, right now, I'm getting the opportunity to travel the world and play baseball. Pretty amazing. It is amazing. Let me just spend this time seeing how good I can get so I can have as much fun as possible when I go play. And I can be truly present for the people that I give lessons to back home. And in releasing all of those false versions of myself, whether it was online or whatever I was trying to do, breath work, all these different modalities, let me just be what I'm doing right now. Just be elevated, being an elevator, being elevating, and just live in that. And it's been life-giving, and that is what, we started this with. Whoever finds his life will lose it, and whoever loses his life for my sake will find it. And that's what I'm uncovering right now. And so as we bring it back, thus there becomes no need and no desire to pull. The field emits as far as the imagination will let it. Therefore, move myself in a place of nothing, because me is in conversation with what is surrounding. There is no separation now. The magnetization of the core within myself, and maybe that core is me, the true self, goes where it is drawn without intention, because it is moved by the Spirit without reason, only because to get somewhere you must walk away from where you have been. It's not doing something to get something on the other side. It's doing it because the Spirit is activating me to do it. Nothing, therefore, is not an act or action or lack thereof, but is rather a way of being. It is the conversation between me and God. It is the transcendence of above and below. And so as we wrap up, this solo ep, which has been pretty biblical, the last 20 minutes we've spent talking about God and some different Bible verses, it's been fun. I mean, the Bible is the greatest book of wisdom that's ever been written, that will ever be written. And I'm only just starting to scratch the surface, and that's been so fun. But I appreciate you listening, and going forward, I'm excited for this journey. And I hope you have fun listening and following along to some of these amazing conversations that I get to have and learn from just these people there from different walks of life, including my own mom. Well, then stick around, because we're headed to Korea in that's probably a little under 2 weeks. We'll just call it under 2 weeks. Korea, month in Korea, back home, Mexico for a wedding, and then out to Australia for 3 months. And man, life is amazing. Life is good. God is good. God bless. Thank you for listening. And let's go do nothing.